ever have one of those experiences where a show was talked up, or maybe you were really anticipating a movie, and then all of a sudden you get there and it's neither really good or it's not exactly bad, but it's just kind of meh? Have you ever had one of those friends where it's just basically like you're trying to tell them a little bit of something, but no matter what it seems that you could possibly tell them, the girl or boy that they are going after just is not interested in them? And have you ever gone through an entire experience just kind of wondering, okay, what the hell is going on, and do we have any sort of definition about what's going on here? That anime is Tower of God. I know, with a title like this as to why Tower of God is bad, it may lead you to believe that I'm about to absolutely just shit all over this anime, but at the same time, I will say that I did like the show, but there were a lot of flaws in it that I think could possibly be corrected in a couple of future seasons, or there were some things that they should have done in this first season of the anime, which they didn't really get to. And even though I'm about to give you guys a whole lot of bad points as to what I didn't like about the first season of the show, I will say that is this one that's still worth watching? I believe that it is. But at the same time, we are also going into this knowing that this is the anime adaptation, which consists of 13 episodes that's streaming right now on Crunchyroll, which is adapted from so many chapters of the actual manga that's out there that consists of, I think it's like 470 or 500 some chapters or something. Not all the chapters are covered in the anime, but at the same time, this is a massive story, but does the anime do it justice with the first season? And this is something that we have to take into consideration, is that when you're actually like faced with a production such as this and you want to go from point A to where you have Bam and Rachel who are just entering the tower and whatnot to a certain point at the very end of this first season where, okay, now we're getting into spoiler alert territory, you have been warned, where Rachel just betrays him at the very end and pushes him off into the Shinsu Lake. You gotta fill in a lot of gaps over here, and for 13 episodes, it's a very hard task to do, and I know that some things have probably got to get cut out in the middle. But regardless, the expectations should still be there as to telling an effective story, which is something, again, I think they missed the mark on with this one. So without further ado, let me explain why I think Tower of God is bad, but you should still watch it anyway. The first point that I want to make is that the story needs to make me care more, especially in the earlier episodes of this anime. When we first meet Bam, he's just kind of this one naive kid who's following Rachel in what looks to be like some sort of life debt of gratitude or something like that, and he wants to follow her because she saved him from this cavern in which he has amnesia. Convenience, anime. But of course, she seeks a better life by climbing the tower in order to see the stars and perhaps have her wish granted. Okay, so far so good, I can kind of understand that. But why though? Having Rachel's story explained a little bit more clearly in the very beginning probably would have been the best move, because we would have been able to see how crappy life was before she decided to climb the tower. For a lot of the other characters, their backstories are not really kind of laid out. I mean, the motivations are somewhat kind of there for the most part, but I feel like we don't really understand exactly where each character is coming from. Two big exceptions to that are Anak and Kun, and I want to say that Kun, especially with his family, having already kind of climbed the tower up to maybe even a certain point, is kind of living up to his family's expectations and stuff, but with Anak, with her being the daughter of one of the princesses of Jihad and trying to actually live up to those expectations, okay, I can understand that. But for everybody else, it's almost anybody's guess. And this is kind of a little bit of a block here and there with getting us to try to care about the characters, only because we feel like we can't really understand exactly what their motives are. While most of the characters' motives are shrouded in mystery as to why they want to climb the tower, we do see a very simple reason for Bam to climb the tower, which is going up into my next point, in that Bam is kind of a boring character. We see that his primary motivation is to find Rachel and try to spend all the rest of his life with her, and going up to the top of the tower and going out to see all the stars, which is great, but at the same time, he's kind of a very just quiet, positive type of personality. But Doug, haven't we had enough of the fiery protagonist who's just gung-ho about everything, and the Lancer who's just kind of over on the side, cold and calculating, and just thinks that everybody in the room is stupid? We have a lot of that in anime, to be sure, but at the same time, when every other one of the main characters seems to be very introverted and nobody's really talking about why they're going up the top of the tower, you get a little bit of a thing to where I can't really care too much about these people. This is of course mitigated, especially when a lot of the characters start to really get to know each other, but that's only happening within the second half of the show. Doesn't happen early on enough. And not only that, but what is Rachel's motivation? We know for a fact that she's willing to betray Bam for sure, but why though? What is really driving her to seek that better life? Is it attention? Is it power? Is it just to see the stars? I don't really know. Which brings me to point number 3, which is that the characters are not really likable until they are, but by that time it's kind of too late. Most of the characters are very standoffish, at least at first. I mean, okay, yes, sure, they're being pitted against each other in a battle to the death almost in order to try to ascend the Tower of God, but at the same time, you don't really have too many people who are very nice to each other, even in their own teams. One character that I did like right off the bat was Rock. This guy was the extrovert that we needed in a sea of characters that just kind of kept to themselves and were kind of like wondering about what the meta is and who they should align themselves with. This guy was gung-ho all the time. And the reason why I like that is because yes, a lot of the characters were very introverted for the most part, but he was just not afraid to speak what was on his mind, which was refreshing to see among the cast. A lot of these other characters didn't really start to form personalities until like the last 5 episodes, and the only reason why I say that is because they got to actually spend a lot more time with each other. Now initially, okay, you form a couple of teams and stuff, and you try to figure out who your teammates are and just kind of make sure that you guys have a good dynamic going into a lot of the challenges, sure. But a lot of times when you're kind of putting in this dynamic, even in their own teams, they weren't exactly opening up to each other neither. But Doug, each individual has their own reason for climbing the tower and their own motivations. That's great! What are those reasons? We don't see a lot of their personalities shine through until the last few episodes, and the reason why I say that is because a lot of their faith in each other is really tested at that point. It really starts to come up into the head in the final episodes, especially with the whole Shinsu Lake type of ordeal, to where they're just kind of like trying to figure out, okay, do we help each other out or do we kind of look out for our own selfish needs? Reconciliations are made and people are actually just kind of starting to care for each other for the most part, but by the time that all starts to happen, the show's pretty much over. However, a lot of people do tell me that if you were to get into the story, you gotta read the manhwa in order to get the full scope of what's going on. And that's all well and good, but at the same time, it's one of those things where me and so many other peoples were kind of making the decision, is it really worth our time? A lot of people like myself are probably only going to be exposed to the anime for the most part, only because we have a lot of other shows that we want to watch and a lot of other video games to play as well. So it's a little bit challenging, especially when you only have 13 episodes to kind of impress an audience. And I know that a lot of people are going to be comparing this anime to Hunter x Hunter, which is a valid comparison, by the way, for all of you guys out there. I want to bring up another 13 episode anime that I want to compare this to, and that is Angel Beats. In Angel Beats, you have a character, Otonashi, who essentially also suffers from amnesia, and he wakes up and he finds out that he remembers absolutely nothing, and then he finds out that he's dead, and essentially is in some sort of afterlife. He meets a whole bunch of characters who are going against this entity called Angel and whatnot. Okay, it's perfectly fine. But we find out that his companions over here all have backstories of their own. And even in the span of just 13 episodes, sometimes Angel Beats would take you through a character's backstory in like a scene of like 3 to 4 minutes. And from there, they would tell you all about a character's backstory, a little bit about their personal life, and about what exactly pulls their heartstrings, and kind of give you a sense for the essence of who that person really is. It brings the character down to our level so that we can kind of understand their history and what their feelings are for the most part, and why they are the way they are. And does Tower of God do this? Not immediately, but it has the potential to do it in future seasons. And one last point I want to make before we get to my conclusion is that this anime has a lot of potential for Deus Ex Machina stuff going on in it. And what do I mean by that? Even in the first episode, Yuri lends the Black March to Bam just to see exactly what would happen. Under most circumstances, normally, a princess of jihad or somebody who you would think would be somebody in a position of power would not exactly grant some nobody a very powerful weapon right off the bat just to see what would happen. But okay, there's been other circumstances in other animes to where a main character was granted an obscene amount of power right off the bat just because story and plot convenience. But it seems too like the Shinsu magic that's kind of populating the entirety of the Tower of God has a little bit of its own rules too. You have a lot of characters that seem to be at different power levels even though they're part of the same climbing class, if that's even a term. They seem to have hardly any control about what is going on with that. Now we get it too, Bam is an irregular and whatnot. That just again makes it more right for all the Deus Ex Machina potential. You have the regular class of climbers who just kind of were invited into the tower by this one entity called Head-On. They didn't explain exactly why or how they were scouted by the tower. Okay, we gotta maybe figure that out. Maybe they'll come up. But it seems like that would be something at least that would be explained in the first season. And even though 99.9% of all climbers are regulars, yeah, there is that small class of irregulars, but this just makes it all the more right for Bam to have all this crazy supernatural powers, or just, if he believes in his cause and his heart and whatnot, he can ascend as many floors as he wants to, just because. Now, is everything supposed to be laid out for you? All the rules just kind of put out there and stuff as to where this is law and nothing can change and all ambiguity is destroyed? No, that's not what I'm saying, but there's a couple of points that I do want to make as far as this goes. One, it's a part of world building. We need to know what the rules are so that we can operate with them, but we can also kind of see exactly how people can bend or break a lot of these rules, but do it in a way that kind of makes sense. And the second reason is because we want to make sure that we establish an element of desperation and danger for a lot of the characters so that we can care about them and whatever the outcome is. And in conclusion, should you still watch Tower of God? Yes, I believe that you should. If I were to score this out of 5 stars or something like that, I would give it a solid 3.5. And the reason why I say that is because it does have a whole lot of good elements as well. Now, I know I've been harping on the ambiguity and stuff of the show, but the one thing that I do want to say is that even though I've been saying this whole time that has been a kind of weakness of the show, it's also one of the show's greatest strengths. And there are several different reasons why I actually say that. One of the biggest ones is that, okay, the ambiguity, even though I've established it as kind of a weakness of the show, the reason why I like it is because we get to theorize about exactly what's going to happen with a lot of our heroes. And even though the show suffered from a lot of different pacing issues and whatnot, I think the biggest hang up for a lot of people as far as Tower of God was concerned is that it was marketed heavily by Crunchyroll as going to be one of the coolest animes of 2020, and then it kind of fell short of everybody's expectations. A lot of times in a couple other fandoms here and there too, most people who actually get into a show are seeing a show after it's already been realized. Tower of God, on the other hand, is just kind of on its ground level for the most part. It's just kind of getting built up, and we're only got that first season to work with, so it's essentially kind of like a chapter 1 in a huge storybook for the most part. But one thing I do want to make sure happens for this show is that it doesn't take too long in between seasons. If the show takes more than 3 years to produce season 2, I know for a fact that a lot of people are going to lose interest, and that's not a good thing for the story. If they were to debut the second season at some point in 2021 or even 2022 for the most part, and expand upon the story and give a lot more characters, more backstory and kind of exposition here and there too, to where we actually do have a reason to care about them now, we would have a much better experience, in my opinion. Well, what do you guys think about the show? Be sure to leave a comment down in the comment section below, and also be sure to subscribe to the channel and turn on the bell for notifications. Let's get a discussion going. Did you like the show? Did you not like the show? Let me know what your thoughts are down below. And while you guys are at it, also be sure to check out some of our other anime reviews over here as well. And I will see you guys soon in the next video. Bye bye!